analog shift, and just a genius idea that, well, I would say you were one of the innovators of the certified pre-owned watch business, and got together with Watches of Switzerland. Now he's a very wealthy man. So later on when we go out, he's buying drinks, of course. James, thank you for coming and being on the panel. Really appreciate your time being here. And next we have Matt Scannell, who is a musician, a writer, songwriter. Sure. Damn good looking, great pair of glasses, and we'd like to have you join us on the stage here. The common denominator, we have to shake our hand. Yes. Common denominator is obviously watches. These guys love watches. They're going to talk to you about watches today, and I think we'll learn something. And I'm sure there's going to be Q&A, and we can self-educate ourselves. So, without further ado,
thank you so much.
Sir. Yes, I'll get out of your way.
Cool. Well, thanks everyone for being here. Thank you to Wolf for hosting in this beautiful new space. My name is Oren. I write about watches for magazines like GQ, Esquire, Hodinkee, Rock Report, for this guy here, and for some of the brands. We're all friends. We're just going to chat very casually about watches. We're going to talk a little bit about vintage, and we're going to talk a little bit about modern and sort of trends in the industry, and about these guys as collectors, because they're both pretty prominent collectors. James, in addition to founding Analog Shift in 2012, which is now the vintage and pre-owned armed watches of Switzerland, is a significant collector. Matt Scannell over here, if anyone is not familiar, is the founder and frontman of a band called Vertical Horizon, which is an awesome band. And this is fun for me because I remember picking up a record called Everything You Want in the early 2000s. That record sold a couple million copies, and the title track went #1 on Billboard Hot 100. And he's also a pretty prominent watch collector with great taste. So again, we're going to keep this pretty casual, then we're going to do a Q&A. I'm actually going to use my watch so I can keep this under an hour so that everyone can drink afterwards. So this is part of Leaders in Conversation. This is a series that Wolf has done in England, back on home turf, and they're expanding it. This is the first one they're doing in the States in this beautiful new space. So I'm going to start this off with just a softball. Can each of you guys, and I'll start with James, can you give me just a very brief overview of how you came to collecting, how you came to watches, and yeah.
Certainly. Thanks, Oren.
Yeah.
And thanks everybody for coming tonight. I've had the opportunity to work with Wolf for a very long time. We've done some cool things together. It's great to see this new facility, but also it's really great to come out to LA. You guys have had a raw deal recently, and I thought it was a great idea to come out here and see you all and know that the world might be on fire, but we can still talk about what's really important. Watches. Watches, to me, I think, really came to me from my grandfather. It's a story I keep hearing more and more frequently in this world. For me, the relationship I had with my grandfather was special, and the stories that he told me were everything. He had a lot of stuff. He collected a lot of things: music collection, art, strangely small hats, pipes, and watches. And the thing that I connected with at a young age was that the watches and the small hats and everything else, they always had a story, and it wasn't about the thing. And it might have been valuable, might have been collectible, but it was always it's always this beautiful sort of color to where he was when he bought it or what it signified. And when he passed away, he wasn't there to tell me those stories anymore. That sucked. But I had kind of hooked into this idea of finding stories behind objects and thus having some sort of X factor attached to them. And so I started going through his stuff, and watches just grabbed me. So I went down the rabbit hole to try and understand what it was about those things that my grandfather, whom I so admired, what drew him to that. And then, of course, before you know it, I'm up at 3 in the morning buying watches on eBay. And that's pretty much how it started.
Awesome.
This is the confessional part.
Yeah, there will be after. Matt, same question. How did you come to watches?
So my father gave me a Hamilton khaki field mechanical watch when I was a kid, and I was fascinated by the sound of the movement, and I would fall asleep with it underneath my head. And I also just remember winding it. I remember my dad telling me, "Don't overwind it." Like, I was like, "I like winding it." He's like, "It's okay. Let it unwind before you wind." I just loved having experiences with my watch. You know, I was doing things with the watch that my dad gave me. And as the years wore on, I never lost touch with that sort of affinity for watches. And then when we signed our first publishing deal in 1997.
You gold-plated that time.
Good Lord, yeah. I bought an Omega Seamaster, and then that kind of started me down to like, okay, what else is out there in the world? And now I'm just a completely insane person.
I like the metronomic quality there, though.
Yeah.
You're putting rhythm into your head while you're sleeping.
Yeah.
That lines up.
All my songs are at the same tempo.
You guys played Woodstock '99, right?
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah, I was watching this video today.
Yeah.
Were you wearing a watch on stage?
I'm sure I was. I was probably wearing that Omega, you know, my guess.
That's awesome.
But if you do watch that video, and please don't, why are we doing this now?
I showed you a screenshot that and sent it to
There's
you, didn't
the
I?
outfit
The
choice.
pants.
I love the
The
outfit.
leather,
Dude, it's the
leather
worst.
pants.
Yeah,
Amazing.
thanks for that. Don't watch.
We gotta talk trends a little bit and speculate a little bit, because that's half the fun of having, you know, collectors here, especially with James's experience in selling a lot of vintage as well as modern pre-owned. So I think one thing I wanted to touch upon was the move away from the oversized watches in the early 2000s to precious metal stuff, to smaller stuff, even dainty stuff. We're seeing a lot of men wearing what were once strictly considered ladies' watches, and now the brands have themselves sort of gone unisex in the way they market these watches. And this trend seems to be ongoing. And it's the same thing with precious metals. It's like we went away from luxury sports watches into precious metals lately. And I just kind of wanted to get your guys' take on how this trend might continue, if you think this is a long-term sort of change that's slowly proliferating. What's your thought?
So I want everybody to remember that question. Like, hold it very close in your minds, because we're going to skip it and come back to it. But I want to know, actually, how did you get into watches? I don't remember.
Yeah, Oren, come on. What did you wear at Woodstock?
We're not here to talk about how did I get into watches? My mom used to work in jewelry. She worked in New Jersey at a company called Fortunoff, which is a local tri-state area jeweler, and she managed the men's department. And in 1997, she remarried, and there were now 4 kids, and my stepfather and mom got, what's up, dude? Got each kid a watch. So I got a Fossil watch, like I think a lot of kids did. That was my first watch. I found it after like 25 years, still have it. And when I was 13, I was spoiled enough to get this watch from my uncle, and I've been wearing it ever since. So yeah, that's watches for me. All right, back to what I was asking.
What were we at? I forgot.
We're talking about this trend of smaller watches, dress watches, gold watches. Where do you see this going?
Oh, good Lord.
You have a lot of very dainty watches.
Yeah.
Not a one.
No, it's interesting. I am intrigued by. I feel like I, as a collector, I'm not even sure that I really would call myself a collector, but
I will call you a collector.
Yeah.
someone who's a watch enthusiast. I feel like I'm enjoying sitting back a little bit now, because I feel like the trends are kind of veering a bit away from my tastes, and it's kind of interesting to almost question when I was really feeling like the trends were closely mirroring my tastes, what that journey was like. You know, I almost took it for granted. You know what I mean? And so now it is kind of interesting to see the trend towards more, the smaller watches, and which is great. All of it's cool, but I'm not a gold guy.
But you're still following along with it. Kind of, I mean, even if you're sitting back,
Oh, absolutely.
you're paying attention.
Oh, every day.
That's why it's because you're a collector.
Oh.
Yeah. Because if the trend changes away from what you like and you're out,
Right.
you were just along for the hype cycle,
Got it.
right?
Got it.
Yeah, no, you're better than that. I think you all are. Yeah, I mean, it's been very interesting. I think, for a lot of us, in my world, at Analog Shift was kind of built on this 1950s, 60s, 70s sport watch, chronograph, tool watch, purpose-built mentality, and I think the DNA of that is all over my brand. I mean, the watch that I got from my grandfather was a Movado. Actually, it's one of these, not in gold, in steel. It was a chronograph, 38 millimeter from the early 70s. Has a Zenith El Primero movement in it, and it says Movado on it, so it's not worth as much. But it's my grandfather, so it's not for sale. And that was, as a point of entry into this world of sport tool watches that so many of my contemporaries, friends, clients have such a passion for. The reality is, for the first 10 plus years of Analog Shifts, for the first 15, 20 years of me collecting, that's what was being talked about. But the cool thing about watches and timekeeping and watchmaking and horology in general is that it doesn't have to be purpose-built. It can also just be kind of artistic. It can be a little bit avant-garde. It can have a degree of whimsy to it. And I think, if we just pull back a little bit, the fact that we're even talking about this here in 2025, when we all have a phone that keeps much better time than any mechanical device we might ever buy, is significant. And I think what's cool about this dynamic marketplace and this dynamic collector group is that I think cumulatively we kind of wanted to see what else was out there, and the truth is there's a lot. And so smaller, thinner, precious metals, even dainty things have been, I think they're being explored by a larger percentage of the collector community than at any point previously. But there's no guarantee that that's going to be the only direction that we're going to go from here either. I mean, we all like what we like, but I think the takeaway for me is like there's a more acceptance and understanding that watches aren't purely steel sports watches that are over 42 millimeters, and that's cool.
Definitely. And speaking of which, we have kind of a wide array of stuff here. Can you guys tell me quickly what you're wearing?
Yeah. I'm wearing the new Tudor FXD GMT watch. I love it. I think it's fantastic. Not very expensive. I think they did a great job. The first thing I did was take the strap off that came with it, and that's one of the beautiful things about the FXD, is it's like it encourages you to make it your own in that way. And I just think it's fantastic.
We'll be having strap collectors anonymous meetings tomorrow.
Behind what?
I know a lot of people with like 3 watches and like 350 straps.
Yeah.
Wow. On my right wrist, I was just talking about this. This is a Movado Datron from the early 70s. This particular one is 18 karat on a bracelet, and it's got sort of that panda dial, very sort of 60s, 70s motorsport chronograph vibe. Having my grandfather's watch in steel, it had a blue silver panda dial, and I let my dad wear it for a while, and he somehow misplaced one of the end links. And if you've ever tried to find an end link for a 1970s Movado Datron HS360, I can tell you there's one way to get one, and that's to buy another one, which is what I did, and then I bought another one, and then I bought a gold one. So now I have all of them, and that's also, we're gonna have another meeting about that. But yeah, so that's on my right wrist, and then on my left wrist tonight, I am wearing a little reversible watch from a brand called R. Jacquet. Does anybody know about R. Jacquet? Raise your hand if you've ever heard of this brand. Good, me neither. I think that it was a retailer in Switzerland in the 1920s. And this watch walked in my door recently. I'd had another one, maybe about 10 years ago, with a different name on the dial. And that name was Universal Genève. And they're doing some cool stuff right now, or about to. But this watch is called a cabriolet. And the cabriolet has this cool reversing mechanism. And this was patented in 1928, 3 years before the Le Coultre Reverso. Uses a totally different reversing mechanism than a Reverso, but it is the world's first reversible wristwatch, to the best of anyone's current knowledge. And that is probably a fact that our friends over at Universal Genève are going to hype up that marketing machine shortly, is my prediction.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I love that watch.
Yeah, yeah.
Super cool. All right.
And you got the Rolex Submariner.
I have a sub from, I got it in 2002. Yeah, so a five digit steel sub.
Original.
14060?
Yeah.
Original owner.
Original owner, that's
That's
right.
cool.
Yeah, box papers.
That's
the
cool.
works. Yeah. Okay, so let's talk. Let's continue on this liking thing for a little bit. I've been thinking about, just in writing about watches, about sort of, we had this crazy explosion during COVID. We saw absurd pricing. Watches are still generally, I'd say, expensive across the board, more expensive than I can remember. But just want to get your guys' takes on sort of the current state of vintage collecting in particular. Matt, I know you're a vintage guy, Jim's obviously a vintage guy. Just any sort of 35,000 foot view thoughts on where we are in watch collecting today?
I think it's great that the market kind of tanked. Like, it wasn't fun.
You pick up some cool stuff?
No, I mean, not really. Like, it's not that I was using it in an opportunistic fashion. It was just, when it was all hype and bonkers prices, I just felt like I was feeling more disconnected with the enjoyment of this hobby.
Yeah.
I'm not a man of infinite means by any stretch, and so I want to be smart about how I spend the money that I can allocate to this hobby. And it really became kind of cringy, and almost like, if I want to stay in the game, I have to feel uncomfortable. And so that wasn't a great feeling. And I don't know where it will or how it has really kind of evened out, or what the chart would really say. But I know for me, it feels, I feel more connected to it now again, which is nice.
Yeah.
Because I love this thing.
So, I think I'm going to speak about my generation of watch collector, not referring to age but experience. So over 20 years collecting, and what I can tell you is that from my perspective, there has never been a moment in history where more people care about these mechanical things, and that's pretty fucking great. Because they're being preserved, they're being spoken about. There's great writing happening about them. There's an enthusiast community built up around them. That is awesome. It also has crossed into the sort of general lifestyle culture world, and the word is out. And watches are, again, in a world where they're totally obsolete, really popular, right? To go back to that generation thing, my generation of watch collectors is now outnumbered probably 1,000 to 1 from people who have just started getting into watches. I don't see that as a bad thing in a general sense at all, because all of a sudden, the great maisons that make these things have demand. More watches are coming out of Switzerland than they have since before the quartz crisis in the early 1970s. Right? It's pretty much safe. However, the knowledge level is pretty low, right? And that's also not a bad thing. But what is safe for people to get into if they're new? Well, it's safe to get into things that are often brand new, right? From a retailer, from a boutique, something that's got a name brand with a certain amount of notoriety and recognizability. And that's where it goes. And then, I mean, AP can't make endless Royal Oaks, and RM can't make endless RM37s, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So at a certain point, the demand greatly outstripped the supply, and we saw what happened, right? Waiting lists, secondary market pricing well into the stratosphere. At a certain point, Some of that new interest in watches will possibly get burned out by that, or getting sick of waiting lists or what have you, and they'll drop out. Let's say, for a second, that 90% of all the people that got into watches over the last 5-10 years, they're out. All right, they got the watch they wanted, or they moved on to the next thing. 90% of those new-blooded collectors, they just walk away. My generation, will still be outnumbered 100 to 1. And what those collectors will earn over the next 5, 10, 15 years is knowledge. And they will begin to learn what's truly valuable and what's truly rare and what's truly desirable. So when it comes to vintage and the vintage market, I think the truth of the matter is it's just beginning. It's all cyclical. I spent this morning with a very dear friend and my mentor, Ken Jacobs, over at Wanna Buy a Watch. He's been doing this for I think since the late Cretaceous. He can tell you stuff that would curl your toes about how this industry actually operates. And we should all be so fortunate to be doing it in the light, in a world where there is social media and some absolutely incredible publications, YouTube channels, and panel discussions happening under the light of day instead of in a back alley somewhere. Watch collecting and the watch marketplace, I think, is going to be totally fun. Within that, you're going to have hype cycles, you're going to have brands that come up and models that come up and styles that change and new blood coming in and out. But I think it's been proven here that the watch community, the watch marketplace, and watch collecting and watch enthusiasm, it's here to stay. So just have some fun with it. That's what this is all about. We're not saving lives here.
Yeah. I remember speaking to Paul Boutros at Phillips maybe 6 years ago for an interview for a print story, and him saying that we do this all day, and so we take it for granted, but the market is, compared to the fine art market, is not even 1/100th as saturated.
Oh yeah.
And we're really on the cusp of this, it feels like.
Yeah.
So moving back to new watches, or back to current day, 2025, for whatever reason, has just an astounding amount of significant or made to be significant anniversaries. It was just with AP in Switzerland for their 150th. It's 270 for Vacheron. Rolex has 2 significant models whose anniversaries the brand will probably ignore. There was a Steel 222. There's a crazy QP movement from AP. There's stuff is coming out this year.
It's also the year of the snake.
It is the year of the snake. Anything in particular that has not come out that you guys would like to see?
Why are you looking at me, man? I have pretty simple tastes. I would be intrigued to see if Rolex would re-release the Milgauss. I think that would be it'd be fun to see if they would do that, what they would do. It would be interesting to see what they would do for the anniversary of the GMT Master. I guess when you mentioned the Steel 222, and I think that's just absolutely exquisite. I think it's wonderful to watch. And I remember calling you years ago about a Steel 222, and can I get one? Do they exist? How hard is it to find one? And I remember, you say, well, they're out there. There's not that many. And I love that Vacheron's going to be putting more out to the world. And I know they don't make many watches, but for me, that's really exciting. The integrated steel sports watch thing doesn't really entice me all that much. But the Steel 222, there's something about that. The elegance of that bracelet, everything about it, really, frankly, is just. I haven't seen one in person, so I really don't know what I'm talking about. But the pictures, I'm like, I think I can rock that. You know what I mean?
I think you'd rock the yellow gold one.
You're crazy.
we're gonna get you out of your comfort
I
zone.
love it. I love it.
You should wear it on stage.
Yeah.
So one of us up here actually has some idea of what's coming. So Oren, you want to leak some shit?
I do not want to go to Swiss prison for the rest of my life. Swiss prison sounds frightening to me.
All they serve is roasty.
Exactly, yeah. It's just fondue and wines that they don't export. No, I will refrain from saying anything about anything I might or might not have heard about. What do you want to see?
I want to see more fun watches, and I'm really getting sick of this Pantone of the Year thing. there's blue watches, and then there's green watches. All right, like how about something novel? It's important to understand, and I've been doing interesting things in this industry for a while, and I've had access and opportunity to see a lot of how this stuff actually gets made, and it is important to understand that it takes a little while to develop a new watch and breathe life into it. It can take, in some cases, 5 to 10 years for a new model, especially if it's a complicated thing. Becoming in iterations with colors and whatnot is relatively low-hanging fruit. So it certainly makes sense for a product life cycle that these things happen, but we don't have to make a big deal of it every time they come out with a new blue watch or a new coral watch or a new, what's this year's Pantone? It's like non-erotic nude.
We call that sound.
What is it?
Mocha mousse.
I like your name. Very different. Mocha mousse. Yeah, I don't know. I don't want to see that.
Call that.
Well done. Well done.
He's a professional. He watched it.
It's true. It's true. We got the Statler and Waldorf in the front row. Just back check. I'd like to see more fun watches, right? And I think that at every price point and from all the brands, the world could use a little bit more levity. And so,
What constitutes levity?
Yeah,
I mean,
what's fun?
I don't know, if you put like a bunch of balloons on a dial and you have a date mechanism that just gives you emojis, like I gotta tell you, that's cool. That's
It is
fun.
cool.
That's fun. There's some plastic watches that have like Snoopy on them. I heard that's pretty neat.
Right.
I like that.
Yeah.
That's fun.
Well, but fun, empirically,
Yeah, fun.
should be,
Capital F fun.
yeah, like this should be fun.
Yeah.
And I feel like sometimes some of that joy maybe either gets lost or we kind of perseverate on details that aren't really that important when it's like, put on a cool watch and go do something fun.
But that's like stage 11 collecting. No, you have the collectors of we are a pretty detail-oriented bunch, particularly if we are spending this kind of money on this small a thing.
Right.
All right, I understand it. The happiest collectors I can tell you about are the people who stopped worrying about how much their watch is worth or how much their collection is worth. They just sort of go, you know what, this is great, and some of them might be up and some of them might be down, and that's good. And get to a point where they go, you know what, I actually don't care if the date window is like, a 30% to Mocha Mousse. Like let's just have, no, I agree, I totally agree. But it's kind of an advanced thinking, which is get out of your own way and enjoy the thing.
But for the first 5 years of collecting, you have to scream at people in the Hodinkee forums.
Yeah.
The contract we all signed.
Yeah.
Want to move into, you guys have been collecting for a long time. I want to move this into the advice column, sort of part of the, never had better access to information about watches online, in print, on Instagram, which is fairly new, relatively new, on social media. If someone here, I mean, I see a lot of cool watches, probably not too many new collectors in here, but for someone who is a new collector or who is wondering why the hell we're so interested in these little things, someone coming into the hobby, what kind of advice would you guys give to a new watch collector? What do you think is, some people harp on condition, some people harp on rarity, what's important to you guys? Matt, start with you.
Well, I've been thinking a lot about that phrase, your watch says a lot about you. And I sort of feel like, for me, it's indicative of kind of a way of living that I kind of want to shift away from. I feel like that whole ethos of I'm wearing a thing so that you will feel a certain thing about me is not the way I want to spend my calories and my breaths. You know what I mean? And so, as much as I can, I want to shift that thinking to how does that watch make me feel? How does that thing, whatever that thing is, how does it make me feel? I feel like we get so much of that coming at us all the time. You should be wearing this, you should be thinking this, you should be buying this. And that's great. if it's something that you genuinely connect with. I'll just speak first person. It's great if it's something that I genuinely connect with, but I don't want to continue that cycle just to be perpetuating that cycle. And so if I were to say anything to a beginning collector or someone who has an enthusiasm for watches, and I like saying watch enthusiasm as opposed to passion, because I feel like passion almost indicates heated emotions, and some of that thing you were saying about like the comment section, that whole thing. Like I feel like that
Toxic fandom.
it doesn't necessarily serve us, but enthusiasm does, just inherently, right? If we are enthusiastic about a thing, we lift it up and enjoy it. And so I want this watch, my watches, to be a source of enjoyment for me. And I think it should just be that simple for a beginning collector. When you make a decision to purchase a watch, how does it make you feel? Don't worry about anything else.
Also, enthusiasm has more letters in it.
It does, it means you're smarter.
Well, and also you get paid more per letter.
Sure.
I have it right.
I do.
You know what's interesting about that, Matt, is that when I started, the first advice I was given was buy with your heart. You know, don't think so much about the wallet, and don't overthink it. If you love it, you know, go for it.
Yeah.
And what's funny is I used to tell the story a little differently, and I think I've reached a new pinnacle of evolution for it. Is that I used to say that was beautiful and simple when it was a simpler time, but now look how expensive these goddamn things are. You got to think with your brain. You got to think with your wallet a little bit. You got to make intelligent decisions. I think maybe I think you said it perfectly, which is I actually think we should go back to that. You know, you should buy with your heart, and to the extent that you can say damn the torpedoes with how much these things cost, then I say go for it. Buy what you love, and you know, we have another saying in New York. Forget about it. Let's just say that.
Speaking of your own sort of personal collections and collecting, Matt, I remember you being a pretty focused tool watch guy.
Yeah.
James, I feel like your collection runs the gamut.
Yeah.
Is there anything you're still searching for? Is there any culling going on? What's sort of the state of the collection these days?
I mean, listen, for somebody who sells watches for a living, I am horrible
It's a loaded question.
at selling my own watches. Yeah, I'm not very good at that. I think the last time I sold a watch was like maybe in 2019 for myself. I see and handle and buy a lot of watches every week. It's my job. It's a pretty good job. And what I've been trying to do is maybe bring fewer of those into my own collection. Sort of like one for them, two for me. Kind of, we just gotta switch that around a little bit.
You gotta work on that math.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm buying stuff that I've never bought before. I have to say, my fiance is in the back row, looking very lovely, and I had not put a lot of thought into ladies' watches in years past. It has been truly delightful, A, that she tolerates all of this, B, that she's gotten into it, and C, it's been really fun learning about ladies' watches on a level more than what I already had. So I think on some level I'm shopping more for a totally different type of client, and that's been really rewarding. Plus, if I buy them for her, then it's, you know, it doesn't go into my bucket. And it's research. Justification game, very strong. What was the question?
I forgot.
Yeah.
What about you?
I don't really sell watches. They tend to come into my life, and I just hold them. Yeah, like Gollum, my precious. Sad.
I'm too tall to get off.
Yeah. The good news for me is I have very, very specific, and I'll call them limited tastes. And I don't even know that I have plural tastes. I think I have limited taste. And so it is generally, you know, steel or maybe, you know, titanium. Tool watch, as adventurous as I want to get as a GMT function,
Cool.
and that's it. So I'm happily kind of just at that level, and I'm staying there, man.
Challenge accepted.
Next year,
Yeah,
just
yeah.
see with a Piaget.
Yeah,
with
the
a-
rainbow bezel.
Yeah.
We're gonna get there.
Perpetual calendar,
Yeah.
Meridian.
Yeah. Follow on, I was just wondering, was there a celebratory watch when Everything You Want went #1?
Yeah, that's a great question. There was. I bought a 1973 Rolex 5513 no-date sub,
Which you still have.
which I still have, and I will never. Yeah, I'll always keep that watch, and I love it. I love it. And it did sort of begin a little tradition when there were victories, and I think that's one of the things that's so great about this hobby is, you know, it can be a celebration and then a reminder of victory. Or, you know, the other thing that I think is important, that I've found to be important for myself, is some of these watches that I've bought in times of strength help me in times of weakness. And if I'm going through something that's challenging, whatever it might be, even if it's just a difficult day, if I'm wearing that watch that I bought to sort of celebrate that beautiful moment, it kind of helps me. It helps me in some small way pull me through. And I think it's hard to put into words, but if you connect with watches in that way, it almost goes without saying. I could see a lot of people nodding as I was saying that, and I think that's beautiful because in my real life with real people, like all of my friends would look at me.
None of you are real.
All of my
Way to
friends,
go.
they would all look at me like I was crazy. Like, what are you talking about? It's just a watch, but you guys get it, and I think it's really great.
Yeah. You are like a notorious one-watch guy, and I'm kind of jealous of that. But let's just say that I took that away from you for like a while. What are you going to replace it with?
Oof.
New,
A
and
2002
new and
Rolex.
Yeah, exactly.
14611.
Yeah, I mean, I have a couple of other significant watches. I have some that were my grandfather's. We have my great-grandfather's IWC that he got on the eve of World War I. And those are significant, but I can't wear that stuff every day. You know, this I've worn diving, I've worn it in the military, I've worn it in a recording studio, I just don't think about it. And so I think if God forbid something happened to this, which would upset me, I'd probably buy not a new sub, but like a new tube.
Let's say you know you're going to get it back. I've taken away your toy, but you're going to get it back.
Yeah.
You're going to get something different because you can't go every day without a watch. What is it?
I would get probably a Black Bay 50. I think that's a
Great watch.
Yeah, great watch. I'm a simple guy. I'm gonna ask another one or two, and then I'm gonna open it up to questions. Everybody cool? Nobody's fallen asleep yet? All right, everybody looks awake.
That guy is.
I definitely want to mention the space we're in, and want to mention Wolf, and I'm gonna do that by not only just mentioning the fact that this is one of the most, if there's anybody here who does not know, this is one of the most prominent names, and probably the most prominent name in watch storage, in winders, in safes, in everything that you see here. But moving it to you guys, how do you guys store your collections as you travel with them? Because that's something I think we all pretend with once we have more than 2 watches.
This is mine, and I fly with it. They let me check it. I walked in here and I was like, oh man, it's the coolest thing I've ever seen. It's my watch storage. I actually have an analog shift Wolf 3 watch roll, which is fantastic and beautiful. And then I have sort of assorted others. I have an amazing analog shift one that you did with Graham Fowler.
Oh my God, that's like 1,000 years.
I got one of those.
Yeah, which I love.
Yeah.
Wow.
But it's kind of a hodgepodge. Only thing I really care about is that they're protected. But my watches are not that well protected. I'll work on that.
We can fix it.
I guess it depends on where I'm going, how long I'm gonna be there, and who my audience is, but, I mean, I'll just show you. I did this with Wolf. This is a 12-watch roll, and I remember, you know, my business partners and everybody else kind of said, who wants to carry 12 watches with them? I mean, I also make a 24. Yeah, you know, so this is
great.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
I like this.
It's good, right?
So, wool, what
It's
is that?
unicorn scrotum.
Oh, it's the best scrotum. We all know that's the best scrotum. Didn't know I was gonna say the word scrotum today.
I didn't know either.
Never mind,
I have a
3
bet that I can
times.
say this. Yeah, that's how I do it. Yeah. I mean, there are certain countries that require a different approach.
Yeah, for sure. There's certain countries for which you're taking one of these on the plane.
Yeah, and sometimes just, you know.
We won't elaborate. All right, one more question, then we're gonna open this up to you guys' questions. I mean, you in particular have owned one of everything, but Grail. And you haven't had it yet. What is it? Something you're not owned.
I didn't see that one coming. Go to Matt.
Matt.
Millsop.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know that I'll ever cross that bridge. My friend Morgan in the back. Hello, Mr. King.
What's up?
Morgan showed me his Millsop years ago, and it just was like, oh, well, come on.
Yeah.
And the lugs are soldered in, and it's sword hands, and it's pretty cool. Fully demarcated bezel, and it's just the coolest thing.
Nerdery.
Just the best. But, you know, they're an awful lot of money, but, you know, whatever.
That's a good choice.
Yeah, that'd be my choice.
Did you know that, you know the sort of James Bond era, the GoldenEye era Seamaster, everybody can picture that, right?
Yes.
Did you know they made that in solid 18 karat gold with a blue dial, blue wave dial, and blue bezel? I didn't know, I found out the other day, and that's my grill.
I've never even seen a picture of that.
I have to have it. I mean, that's this week's grill. I have no idea, man. I have to say, I'm very fortunate to have handled some of the coolest, rarest, most interesting provenance watches in the world. And for a long time, by the way, that was how I managed to do what I do without spending all my money on what I do. In that, my inventory, which at the time did belong to me, I just bought and brought in things that if suddenly the world ended, I got stuck with them, I'd be okay with that. So that was the actual truth for a while. I have since sold my company to Watches of Switzerland, but I still buy in our inventory using that premise, and that means that there's a lot of really neat stuff that I get to play with around. I haven't really thought of a Grail in a while. Yeah, that James Bond yellow gold weirdo Seamaster from 1997 sounds pretty good.
I'll give it 6 months before I thought one of those in your Real quick before we open this up, just want to thank Wolf once again. Congrats on this beautiful new space. Thank you for hosting this. Thank you for inviting us in particular and having us. And thank you guys very kindly for listening. Does anybody have any questions for these two guys?
Morgan King in the back.
Okay, as a collector.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, hold on. We have a mic.
Oh, you get a mic.
Oh.
You have to phone and mic.
Yeah.
I come up.
All right.
Hi guys, I love you guys. As a collector, what watch has eluded you? And are you on a mission to retrieve it? Or is there a story of a watch that's eluded you and how you were able to obtain it or how you were able to let it go?
Good question.
That's a great question. I feel like Morgan should be up here answering that question. You have to go.
Yeah, there's a watch that was sort of a mythical thing for me for a long time. It is in fact a Rolex. I've been fortunate, I suppose, that I never got bit by the Daytona bug. I consider that a blessing. But I did get bit by the pre-Daytona bug. And there's a reference known as the 6238, or the Lazenby, which is the James Bond chronograph in On Her Majesty's Secret Service. No, you're jumping ahead. It's my story.
Go ahead. I'll be over here.
Silver dials are beautiful, and I've procured and sold a dozen or so over the years. the black dial variant of this watch it's impossible. I'd actually only handled one in my entire collecting career, and the guy who had it on his wrist had been a gift from his father, and he didn't need the money, so there was no way I was getting it. And I think in my world I've just come to be very patient, because at some point these things just show up. And I was visiting a vendor this past summer, buying some Cartier for inventory for the holidays, and I had actually just bought another long-time hunt, which was a Patek 3940 with a fitted bracelet, so I was feeling pretty good about myself, and was pretty sure I wasn't going to buy anything from him for myself that day. How wrong I was, because there in a pile of watches on his desk was in fact a black dial 6238. I exclaimed, and I see this, and he said, of course, and I was looking at it, and I sort of asked him where he found it, and he told me what he paid for it, which was, to be clear, an awful lot of money, but not as much as it was worth. So immediately my brain said, do this. And then he said, you know, I'm going to be traveling for 90 days, so you can take it and pay me in September if you want. And my response to that was, do you have a Jubilee bracelet for it? So yeah, that was 10 years plus, maybe 12 years trying to find that damn thing. And then there it was. So, you know, just stay true to your dream, and make sure you walk into a lot of watch dealers' offices, and maybe it'll just be sitting there or something. That's the moral of the story. I love that. Yeah. And then, you know, hopefully he offers payment terms.
That's good. You know, I have to say, like, I'm happy to answer this question this way. I'm pretty happy. Like, I like my collection. I like my watches. I'm not pining for something. I don't have a you know, a Moby Dick white whale out there that's a loser. You know.
Milsa?
Well, you know, there have been moments when I've thought, and I think I've even spoken with Morgan, I know I've spoken with you about this, would I consolidate, you know,
Stage 7 collecting.
and take the many and turn it into a few, or just one. And I would love to be the guy, Oren,
I know, I'm so jealous.
who, like, my version would be, like, could I turn myself into the guy who just has that watch and that's my watch?
That's some Stephen Poulter shit. I can't do that.
But I do love
the minimalism. It's beautiful.
But I do love the variety. I think that's one of the joys of this hobby is, you know, how do I feel today? What's calling to me today? You know, recently I kind of went down the Seiko. I love old Seiko. I love vintage Seiko, and I went down the vintage Seiko diver sort of rabbit hole, and found myself, you know, 62 Mas, 6217, you know, 6306, 6105, all these watches, and then gradually going back to 6159, which is the monocoque case watch, and then discovered, as I was nerding out on the 6159, the 6125. And I bought a 6125, and it's the greatest Seiko diver ever made. And I'm so, like, you know, jubilant to have this thing in my life. And so I guess the pursuit is always worth doing, and every now and again you'll pull the trigger and go, holy cow, this is way better than I thought it would be.
Yeah.
But there's not really something that is keeping me up at night. Let's put it that way.
I'd ask you that question, but you're just going to say, oh, it's in 2002, 14, 06.
I would. Exactly my answer. Who else? Anybody else got a question here?
Yeah, what's a 6159?
What is a 615?
It's one out all the time.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
No, we're like,
sorry.
You didn't get the decoder book?
We should have a screen.
We should.
The 6-1. So the Seiko's first, and I'm not really qualified to be giving a vintage Seiko lecture, so forgive me. I'll probably get some of this wrong, but Seiko's first entry into the dive watch category was the 6217, called the 62 Mas. It looked very much like it was a skin diver, a very simple kind of thin, almost elegant dive watch.
And 1970s?
67, 65? God bless you.
67.
67?
Yeah.
Oh.
Uh-oh.
So who knows? Mid 60s, right? And then they.
It's gonna be a fight afterwards.
See you in the parking lot. And then, of course, people were diving with him, and they had water ingress, and they wanted to make it better. So they created this monocoque case where the movement actually goes down. You can't screw the back on. And that was the 6159. And it's more of a behemoth. It looks purposeful. It looks like we would associate, almost like a Ploprof. It's a husky thing. Actually, the 6215 was the first entry into that. And it's more refined. I'm losing self-photo. I'm sorry. But the loom plots are exquisite. The shape. So homework tonight is Google search Seiko 6215, and it just is elegant in a way that the subsequent incarnations of that model, the 6159, gets a little less pure, a little less, to my eye, beautiful. It's a perfect mashup of kind of beauty and beast. Yeah, beauty and beast. Yeah.
Both of them are talking about Seikos.
Seikos are awesome. I started collecting with Seiko, and I recently went back to Pro. We haven't talked about that either. I have a 6159, and I'll fight you in like the parking lot.
Let's do it.
We have time for two more, is that cool? All right, we got two more questions, anybody? This gentleman over here.
Thank you. Thanks for being here. My question is about travel. So you guys are on airplanes probably all the time, and you're traveling with 12 watches at a time. So what is your opinion about having your watches go into the metal detector in the airport? Because I don't want my watches to go into the metal detector. I feel it will get magnetized, but I've had arguments with the people at the airport about like, no.
You should fight with the TSA.
Yeah, in Italy I had an argument.
They take kindly to that.
Especially.
I don't know. You want to go first?
I tend to not really travel with many watches, to be honest. Every now and again I do, and I just put them in my bag. But I'm not really, meaning I put them in my backpack, and the backpack goes through the machine. And I have never had a watch get magnetized. So I just kind of don't worry about it. That's my answer. But I also think you could get a demagnetizer, and they're cheap and fairly. But
Yeah. You're more likely to magnetize your watch, and God, this makes me cringe. Don't take your watch off and put it on top of your iPad, phone, laptop. That will magnetize the shit out of your watch.
Yeah.
There's so much magnets and X-rays and carbon monoxide and all kinds. I mean, bird flu just out there. Your watch is gonna, honestly, just microwave radiation will fry all your shit before an X-ray machine, in my experience. But yeah, demagnetizer is a good thing. It's this cool little red box. You plug it in, you put it on, you go boop. That's pretty much it.
I would also say that I, like these guys, travel a lot, and mostly with this, but sometimes with other stuff. And it, pre-check, it stays on your wrist, goes through the thing, and I haven't had trouble before.
Only time I ever had trouble was right here at LAX. They wanted me to take every watch out of my 24 watch roll and show them that they weren't miniaturized timing devices for, some nefarious purpose.
Only in LA.
Yeah.
All right, let's do one more. Anybody have a last question for these guys?
I do, of course. I'm a storyteller. I feel like you opened up tonight. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Just start your story over.
It's not a story. You're gonna share it. You guys opened up kind of about your IWC from your grandfather has a great story. You got into watch collecting from your grandfather who was sharing stories. So what watch in your collection has the best story that you can share with us tonight and about the watch as well?
Good one. Matt?
I love this story, but it's not my story. But I think it's one of the most wonderful things about collecting vintage watches is that you sort of become a part of someone else's story, and that story becomes a part of yours. I bought a Rolex 1655 Explorer 2 with on the back it's what do we call it? Engraved. Thank you. Bose ice cream. 25 years of service. And it just made me think, okay, this guy's worked at Bose ice cream. I looked it up, it's in Florida. He worked at Bose Ice Cream for 25 years, and I imagine that they were like, we'd like to give you a Datejust or something. He's like, no. I've been thinking about this for 25 years. You're not getting me a Datejust. I'm gonna get a 1655 Explorer too. And I just love that. And there was a time when that would have been polished out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The prevailing winds of vintage collecting was, let's remove all traces of those who have come before us. And I do love that we are now at a place where it's like, no, let it be, because that, to me, that's a much cooler watch with the Bose ice cream, inscribed in the back, or whatever. So I mean, I've got, obviously, the Hamilton khaki field watch, I still have it, that my father gave me, I still wear it all the time. That's my most prized watch. But I do love the Bose ice cream watch. It's cool.
I think engravings, and I've seen some really special engravings in my time, can add so much to a watch. And I understand that people kind of want to, blank page with their watch and they want to start their story with that watch. I've never had that interest. I love picking up a book that's dog-eared pages and some notes scribbled in the margin. So to me, engravings on case backs are awesome. Yeah, and I've seen things engraved on the outside that are beautiful and touching and symbolic. And I've also seen engravings done on the inside of a watch, which is very unusual. But in this particular case, it was actually between two women who were clearly lovers at a time where that was socially unacceptable. And they had somebody engrave the inside. I'm getting goosebumps. It was so special. And it engraved the inside of this watch so that they knew but that it wasn't out in the world. It was amazing. Story with my watches, all my watches have stories because I have to tell myself stories in order to justify buying them. Here's a quick one. Years ago, I met the fabulous Laurent Ferrier. Laurent Ferrier is a master watchmaker, designer, spent many years at Patek Philippe before racing at Le Mans and sharing a podium with Paul Newman in a Porsche. That's just cool. And then he started his own watch brand. It's a micro brand in Switzerland today. And the thing I love in general about Laurent's watches is that they are very minimal. They're very simple. And in a world of indies that are ultra avant-garde, got a whole bunch of crazy stuff going on, I think it's beautiful to see something that's executed with sort of classic Patek Calatrava sensibility, just absolute. And you have to get it right. If there's not a lot going on, it has to be perfect. And to me, his watches are perfect. Early on in my collecting, he came to New York and was doing a talk with the Red Bar chapter there, of which I helped found. And he doesn't speak English, like at all, so he had a translator with him. But he did a presentation about his watches to a group of very excitable enthusiasts, some of whom could afford his watches, and I was in the category of not being able to afford his watches, but I was delighted to have met him. And sort of when I had a moment to go over and speak with him at the end, I said, through his translator, everything is through his translator. Mr. Ferrier, I want you to know I think your watches are absolutely spectacular, particularly the Gallet Square Boreal, this beautiful sort of minimalist sector dial that's all glows up with luminous under UV and whatnot. He said, but I have to make a decision as to whether or not I should restore my classic Porsche or buy your watch. First world problem. Well, yes, I suppose it is, but I bought this car for like $7,000. And so he's very interested all of a sudden, and through his translator, he said, what Porsche? So, it's an old 912. He grabs my arm. What, through his translator, what year and what color? So it was Irish green, 1967 912. And he gets very excited, and his translator says, Mr. Ferrier would like you to know that his very first car was a 1967 Irish green Porsche 912, and he should restore that car before he buy his watch. And I ran into him a year or so later at one of the watch shows in Geneva, and he's a little guy. And I saw me across this crowded room at the PAL Expo, and he's like a little Swiss elf. beelines right across the room, and he grabs the nearest passerby who might have also spoken French and English, and starts asking me about the process on the car. And I was able to tell him that I'd started the restoration. I finished that car, and I had shared the story with a collector buddy of mine in Arizona, and I actually came to LA just under 2 years ago to pick up that car and drive it back to New York after a 6-year-long restoration. And I told this story to a collector friend in Arizona, and I stopped in Arizona on the way home, and he bought himself this watch at a certain point, and I thought he'd sold it a long time ago, and he pulled it out when I spent the night at his house, and he said, well, your car's done, I figure you want to have the watch now. I said, you're giving this to me? I was like, hell no. Anyway, I bought the watch, and so I sent a picture on to Laurent with the watch in the car, and that was a cool moment. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Great question, thank you.
Thank you guys so much. Thank you guys for coming. Thank you to Wolf for hosting us. And thank you guys for your kind attention. I do want to say real quick, if anyone was asleep in 1999 and did not hear Vertical Horizons, Everything You Want, still,
Don't listen to it, go to YouTube and watch it at Woodstock. Please don't.
I remember buying this record at Sam Goody in the early 2000s when I was a kid and re-listened to it the other day. It is such an awesome record,
Oh,
still
yeah.
25 years later. Yeah. So
That
please
was
check
the
it out.
soundtrack to my first year with the driver's license.
Please check that out if you haven't heard it. And thank you for hosting us. Thank you to these guys for having us.
Well, I want to just add that thank you, the three of you. You were doing the thanking, but thank you, Oren, Matt, and James. Really, really informative, really fun. Your storytelling is brilliant. Numbers of watches, the 5123, the 4. I love that guy. I love watches for the simple reason of the beauty of them. And they quite often, if you drop one, it doesn't break. It just keeps working. This tiny beating heart, but it's just an amazing piece of engineering.
Don't drop your watches, folks. Don't listen to this man. That's not what they're for.
If you're a budding watch collector, don't worry about all those numbers. Just look at the beauty of them.
Yes, absolutely, yes.
Here, here.
Amen.
So, in a moment, a big round of applause, but I want to tell you that we have a bar here full of booze. We have some food still going. So, don't feel like you have to run. Stay, hang out, talk watches. But most importantly, please, a huge round of applause for these two.